Hi everyone, welcome to today's session on curved roof trusses. Today we'll be going through selecting the right truss, modeling curved trusses, updating with design changes, and custom curved examples. So we're going to start by selecting the right truss. So I'm just going to jump over to the structural library, and I've just filtered it by trusses. So we can see all the ones that we have available in our library. The one that we want to be picking for curved trusses is the sort of the straight line or rectangular shaped trusses, not the pitched roof truss. Specifically, what we want to take a look at is the design of the web. Hopefully you can see that okay, but if you don't, if you can't find a design that matches what you're after in our library, just let us know and we can build them for you. So I've already loaded one into the project. Let's jump into it. Okay, so we'll take a look at the structure that we're going to be building the curved trusses for. So it's just a pretty simple structure. It's got some curved corrugated, and then we've got a few columns that we're going to sit the truss on top of. Okay, so let's take a look at modeling the truss to start with. So we want to be modeling a section to start with, and I'm just going to reduce the depth of it just so we're only looking at or encompassing the first truss or the first set of columns. Let's jump over to that section now. The first thing we want to do, I'm just going to extend this out a little bit more. The first thing we want to do is place the reference plane. This is the reference plane that the truss will be hosted to. It's not too critical the height where it's at because we are going to be editing the profile of this truss, but I tend to just draw it at the base of the roof. So I'm just going to draw a reference plane and I'll model it to the underside of the roof. Cool. Then we're going to call that, let's just call it curved truss. Alrighty, we'll jump back over to the floor plan and we're going to model the truss. So we'll go into the structure tab and we'll use the structural truss tool. Now, before we place it, we just want to check a couple of things. First being, we want to make sure we're going into the type parameters. It's just popped up on the other screen. And we want to make sure we select the correct structural framing families. I've already filled this in previously, but you've got to load them, load these families in from the library before you adjust them. Otherwise, you won't be able to find them here. We have done some training on this in one of our previous truss classes. I believe it's called configuring trusses. So if you haven't seen that, just watch that first and it'll run through all of this space for you. Okay, the next thing we want to do is we want to adjust the placement plane. So I'm just going to select that and we're going to choose the curved truss reference plane. All right, we don't really have to worry about any of these other parameters for this one because we're editing the profile. Truss height doesn't really matter in this instance. Okay, let's just go ahead and model the truss. We'll just roughly put it in between those, the roof. We are going to adjust the width of it in our section. Now, this little warning's popped up. If it does pop up, you can ignore it. It's just saying that the elements that you've just modeled aren't visible in this view. It's just because the truss has been modeled above the cut plane. So we can't see in this view, which is fine. So we can go ahead and ignore that. So we'll jump into the section and the first thing we want to do is we're just going to select it and we're going to, using these grips, the width grips, we're just going to extend it to the edge of the roof, like so. And then we're going to go ahead and edit the profile. Now you'll notice that when you edit the profile, you get two lines. So you've got the pink one that defines the top chord, and then you've got the blue one that defines the bottom chord. So obviously we don't want a straight lined truss or a horizontal truss. We want a curved one. So we're going to go ahead and delete these. And we're going to manually draw in the curve of this truss. So the first one I'm going to draw is the top chord. So select top chord, and I'm going to use the pick lines tool in this instance. If you don't have a roof drawn or you don't have a line to pick, you can use any of these draw tools. Usually the start end radius arc is a handy one. So I'm going to use the pick lines tool, and I'm going to zoom in and going to place it to the underside of the roof. Okay, that's the top chord drawn. Now we're going to draw in the bottom chord. Same thing, just going to click pick lines, but this time I'm going to offset it by, let's say 2000 mil. And I'm just going to zoom in just to make sure I'm not accidentally picking a different line. So I'm going to select the underside, and it's going to offset it by 2 meters. And this is where you can completely customize the curve or the look of this this truss. I'm going to extend the ends so they line up with the end of the or the edge of the roof. But again, you can model this however you want it to look like. Once you're happy with the top and the bottom chord, just going to press tick, and Revit's going to automatically generate those webs based on the family that we loaded in. Okay, so far it doesn't look too bad, but we can see there's a few issues with it. The webs don't extend far enough, and then we've also got the roof that's poking through the top chord. So we're going to go through and we're going to modify this truss. So to do that, I like to select everything first. I like to filter out everything and just have the truss components in the view. Just makes adjusting everything a little bit easier. So I'm going to do a full swipe. I'm going to use the filter tool, and I'm going to select check none, and I'm only going to pick the structural framing cords and webs and the trusses. And we'll pick OK. And then we're going to use little glasses, temporary hide / isolate, and we're going to isolate those elements. Now, before you click off, I like to just unpin all of them while it's still selected, and then we can start adjusting the framing members. Okay, we'll start with the top and the bottom chord. If you have watched some of the other training on trusses, this process will be pretty familiar to you. So we'll start with the top chord. I'm going to select the top, and we're going to change the Z justification. For the top chord, we're going to change it to top. That will now sit it underneath our roof. And then I like to change the bottom chord as well to be bottom. The other member I like to change the Z justification for is also this both ends of the truss, the vertical point or the vertical member. This is because if I just quickly unhide this, you'll see that the roof meets the center of this member. So what we want to do is essentially move this or flip it so it's sitting to the right side of the edge of that truss. So I'm just going to undo that, and we're going to select this one, and I'm going to change the Z justification. So usually the left side, the Z justification is the bottom, and that will just shift it across. So now it's sitting underneath the roof, and we'll do that for both sides. Cool. The next thing we want to do is extend all of the members to get them ready to get cut. So we'll start with the top and the bottom chord. Just going to extend that a bit further. Same with the, well, sometimes it can be a little bit hard to tab onto these because these are the CHSs. I think sometimes Revit finds it a little bit difficult. But if you sort of move your cursor around, you'll be able to hit tab and you'll be able to select it. So that's the top and the bottom chord. Then we'll look at the webs. So in the instance of the top and the bottom chord, you'll notice how I've extended it further than the edge or the last vertical member. With the webs, we want to just be modeling it or extending it just to around the center of the member it's joining to. I'll show you why we do that in just a moment. I'll just do that for a few. Now, on a truss of this size, you can see how this is going to take quite some time to extend all of the members. A little tip I've found, if I just hide the actual truss itself, so this one here, just going to hide that. Now you can see the truss isn't there, but the members are. We can, if we go into the Modify tab, we can use this, the Match Type Properties tool, and essentially just match one of the members that you've already adjusted to one that you haven't. Now, we want to just make sure, because the diagonal webs are different sizes to the, or lengths to the vertical ones, we want to match the verticals to the verticals and then the diagonals to the diagonals. So for this one, I'm going to select this, click here, and it's just going to extend it. So you can see here, I can just go through and pretty much spam them. Now you will just have to be careful. As you'll notice, as we get to the top of the curved truss, the distance between the top and the bottom chord, it may be a little bit smaller than it is at the edge. So you'll notice that this member here is starting to poke through. So in that instance, just quickly adjust it and then use that as the one that you're copying across. And you'll see you can actually do it relatively quickly once you use that method, but you just need to double check when you're placing it that they're either extending far enough or they're not going too far. Okay, I'm not going to go through and do all of them because it does take a little bit of time. I have set one up already, done one previously, so it will look something like this once you've finished it. Just have a quick look. We can see that all of these members are now extending far enough that they're going around the center of the, extending into the center of the top or the bottom chord. Now we want to look at slicing these members. So we'll start with the top and the bottom chord. We're going to draw a reference plane, another one. And I'm going to draw it, snapping it to the edge of that vertical member. And I tend to just move these edge or these last ones, this reference plane, I just like to move that about 1 mil away from that vertical member. The reason being, it doesn't always happen, but sometimes when we cut the top or the bottom chord to this reference plane, it gives you an error. So to avoid that happening, I tend to just move this just 1 mil, and that will avoid possibly getting that error. You may do it, you may not get the error, but I've noticed it sometimes just with playing around with this tool. So we're going to use the cut tool. I'm going to cut the bottom chord to the reference plane and the top chord to the reference plane. And that's looking pretty good. If we go into 3D, we can see that's looking pretty good. As we can see here though, with these ones that haven't been cut, it doesn't look 100% accurate. So we'll go through and fix those ones up as well. We'll use the cut tool again. Now, originally, or with the with previous truss training, when we did the pitched roofs, we were able to use the cope tool. Unfortunately, with the curvature of this truss, Revit spits out an error if we try and use the cope tool. So if I try and cope those two, it's just popped up on my other screen. It's popping up and pretty much saying it can't be done. So instead, the workaround is we use the cut geometry tool, and we'll just go ahead and cut these. And you can see as I'm doing it, it comes up with a nice and solid line, and it looks like it's sort of welded together. A quicker way to do that, again, is using the multiple cut tool and then selecting the top chord first and then selecting the web, or vice versa for the bottom chord. So you can see you can actually get through that pretty quickly as well. Now you may get to an instance where one of these members, it's not happening for me right now, but it may spit out an error as well. What I've found to fix that is instead of picking the top chord first, I pick the web first and then the top chord, and it usually fixes that issue. Okay, once you get through all of those, again, I've set one up already. It should look something like this. I'll take a look in 3D in a minute, but you can sort of see everything's cut nicely. It's nice and neat. One thing is if I just select the bottom chord, because this is a CHS, you'll notice that the cut is actually, it's only just cutting that little part there, and it's actually still extending, which is why we don't want to extend it further than the thickness of this CHS. Let's take a quick look at what it looks like in 3D as well. So it's looking pretty good. And even in 3D, those joins, they're coming up pretty nice. Okay, so the truss has been created. Now we want to place multiple instances of it. So I'm going to jump back to my section, and we're going to group this up. So to do that, again, I'm just going to select everything. I'm going to use the filter tool, and I'm only going to select the structural framing chords, webs, and trusses for now. Click OK. And then I also want to add the two reference planes that we've drawn to slice the top and the bottom chord. Now, I usually do that after I've done the select, just because on a normal project, typically you may have a heap of different reference planes already drawn. So just so you don't select every other reference planes, I don't include that in the filter, and I just select it after. Okay, once you've selected everything, we want to group it up. So create group. Let's just call it curved truss. And might do this in 3D. So I'm just going to jump over here and just going to grab that group and copy it across. Just using the copy tool, sorry, this one here. Sometimes this can take 5 or 10 seconds just because these trusses are quite complex. Okay. And they're looking pretty good. You can see the ones that we've pasted, it's taken on that those slices on the end. Now, it is important to have those two reference planes that we've used to cut the top and the bottom chord included inside the group rather than outside the group. I've found that if the reference plane is outside of the group, it actually spits out an error, I think when you're pasting multiple instances of it. So just make sure you keep that inside the group. Okay, that is looking pretty good now. Now we want to look at updating with any design changes. So let's say that the shape of the roof was changed. So I'll just jump back into my section. Let's say the roof is, the curve is a little lower. So let's go and draw one let's say we're changing it to look like this. It actually is a little bit easier than you'd think to update the this curved truss. So I'm going to jump into this section, into this group, and we're going to update the truss. Select the structural truss, and we're going to edit the profile. Again, the same method we used when we first created the curved profile. We're just going to delete the top and the bottom chord, and we're going to create new top chord. Again, using pick lines here to the underside of the roof. Oops, sorry, I did not mean to do that. And then the bottom chord, we'll click the pick lines tool and offset again, let's say 2000. And then make sure if you've extended it, that you don't forget to do that. Okay, that's looking good. Once you're happy with it, again, just press the tick. Now you'll notice once this finishes, the top and the bottom chord will be left behind. That's because they're still unpinned. Now you will get a few of these little errors that say unjoin or the geometry is not being cut. That's fine. We can ignore them for this instance. It's just trying to sort of move everything again. So that's okay. You can ignore those. So you'll notice that the top and the bottom chord have been left behind. It's because they've been unpinned. First thing we want to do is we're actually going to delete these two reference planes, and we're going to redraw them. Now, the reason being, again, it's just another funny thing with Revit. I've found if you don't redraw them, sometimes the bottom chord won't be cut in the instances that you've placed this group. So it'll work for this current instance, but I've noticed it won't cut properly in the pasted instances. So to get around it, I've deleted the reference planes, and then I'm going to redraw them. I'll just draw them a little bit bigger than the other one. And before we cut them, we're going to select the top and the bottom chord, and we're going to shift them back to, or update them with the new design. So to do that, we just need to pin them. And that's okay. Can't cut joined element, that's okay. We can ignore that. And then we want to unpin them again. And then we're going to go through exactly what we did initially. We're going to select the top chord, change the Z justification to top, select the bottom chord, change the Z justification to bottom. And if we have a look at all these webs, they're still cut to the top and the bottom chord, which is great. I would just suggest go through and check all of them just in case there's any weird ones that haven't come across. And then I would go through and cut the top and the bottom chord. So let's cut them. Now I'm cutting it to the new reference plane. I did delete the other one, but for some reason it sort of keeps the old one. I think it's because it's in a different group. It just keeps it there, but it will delete it after we complete this group. So let's cut them. And we'll cut these ones. Now you'll notice I didn't move the reference plane across, and it worked. So sometimes it can cause issues. So if you do get an error there, just shift it across by 1 millimeter and it should fix it. Once we're happy with it, let's click finish. Sometimes this can take, 10 or 20 seconds just because it's trying to update every single instance. You can see there it says updating 3 instances. Okay, not a problem. Again, just another thing you can not worry about. Now, just in saying that, just go through, double check everything's correct. So you can see that this one here will just need to be recut. So you just need to double check that all of them have come across. And then if we have a look in 3D, they've all come across, they've all cut correctly on the ends, and they're and those cuts between the webs and the top and the bottom chord have come across as well, which is really handy. So that's how you pretty much model up curved trusses. The last thing I just wanted to quickly show you was just a couple of examples of what you can do with the truss tool and in customizing these trusses. So I've sort of modeled up this spaceship looking mass, and essentially what I've done here is I've just drawn a whole heap of reference planes to plan out how the trusses will sit, and then I've just gone in and edited the profile to match what the mass is. And it does look rather complex, but when you sort of narrow it down, if you follow that whole process, you can sort of you can get something that looks like this. So um, that's sort of the massed one. Then I've modeled up a couple of other ones that are probably more similar to like a bridge type structure, and that's just by editing the top and the bottom chord and to however I want it to look.